In April 2023, a dream wedding took place on a beautiful beach in South Carolina, United States. But just hours after saying "I do," tragedy struck. Samantha, still dressed as a bride, lost her life after a crime occurred. Today, you will learn about the tragic end of Samantha and Aric Hutchinson's marriage, a union that lasted less than 6 hours. Samantha Miller was born in South Carolina, United States, on March 27, 1989. She was known for her bright personality, her spontaneity, and her love for helping others. Friends described her as someone who instantly lit up a room, but above all, Samantha was in love with the sea. Samantha was in a relationship with a young man named Aric Hutchinson. Their relationship was seen by many as perfect. They got along really well, they loved each other a lot. So when Aric asked her to marry him, she accepted, and they started planning the wedding of their dreams. The wedding took place on April 28, 2023, a Friday, and as it was early spring, they decided to hold both the wedding and celebration outdoors during the golden hour in the late afternoon sunset on Folly Beach. It was the ideal setting, especially for Samantha, who, as I said, had always felt a deep connection to the ocean. They were both radiant. Everything went exactly as planned. Samantha paid tribute to her mother, Lisa Miller, danced with her. The day was beautiful, and she told the guests several times that it was the happiest day of her life. But unfortunately, no one there could have imagined that the whole fairy tale would end tragically that same night. The newlyweds had reserved a golf cart that would be used as a romantic exit at the end of the party. They would spend their wedding night in one of the best rooms in a hotel nearby. The distance between the party location and the hotel was great, and everything was right within the same private beach area. Shortly after 9 at night, Aric's brother-in-law Benjamin drove the golf cart to pick them up. Seated next to him in the front seat was his 17-year-old son Brogan. Aric and Samantha sat in the back. However, during the journey between the party location and the hotel, a car at very high speed collided with the vehicle. The accident was so violent that the golf cart was thrown through the air and completely destroyed. Emergency services and police were called immediately. Paramedics arrived within minutes. Brogan, the teenage boy, was the only one who escaped without serious injuries. Aric and Benjamin were in critical condition, and tragically, Samantha was already gone. She passed away at the age of 34, still wearing her wedding dress. Benjamin suffered severe burns caused by friction from being dragged across asphalt and grass due to the force of the impact. He required specialized treatment, underwent reconstructive surgery, and had multiple skin grafts to repair the damage. Aric was the most critically injured. He fractured several bones in his face, had internal bleeding, a slight brain hemorrhage, broke both legs, damaged spinal vertebrae, and needed numerous surgeries. He was unconscious for almost 5 days, and when he started to regain consciousness, the family and doctors had the difficult task of telling him about Samantha's passing. In addition to having to deal with everything that had happened, the couple's families had to deal with the circumstances of that accident, which in fact had not been an accident. The conditions clearly indicated that it was a crime, as the person who hit the golf cart was a 25-year-old girl named Jamie Lee Komorowski, who was driving while drunk. According to the police officers who responded to the incident on the day of the accident, Jamie was clearly intoxicated, smelled of alcohol, could barely stand upright, and almost fell while being heard. Though she insisted she was sober, she refused to take sobriety tests to check the amount of alcohol she had consumed and was taken to the police station. She told the police she was fine and claimed she had only drunk a can of beer and a shot of tequila and tried to argue that the situation was just an accident. But evidence said otherwise. It turned out that she was driving at a speed greater than the speed limit in the area. The maximum speed allowed there was 40 kilometers per hour, and she was speeding 105 kilometers per hour. And despite having badly damaged the golf cart, the car she was driving, causing life-threatening injuries to Benjamin and Aric, and killing Samantha, she was completely unharmed. When she found out that she would not be returning home that night and that she would be detained, she became hysterical. She screamed that it wasn't fair, that it was an accident, and she started banging her head against the walls, claiming she wanted to die. Fearing that she might seriously injure herself or attempt to kill herself, authorities placed her under medical observation at the Charleston County Jail. The following morning, a court issued an emergency order for a toxicology test. The results showed that her blood alcohol content was 3 times the legal limit. That is, she had not just consumed a beer and a shot of tequila, she's been highly intoxicated. But that leaves one big question. Who is Jamie? Jamie Lee Komorowski was born on September 15, 1997, in Clinton, New Jersey. She grew up with an older sister and a younger brother. She attended North Hunterdon High School, where she excelled in sports, and later graduated from Coastal Carolina University with a degree in hotel and tourism management. She worked several part-time jobs before landing a full-time position as a logistics account executive at Total Quality Logistics in Charleston, where she met a guy named Evan, who eventually became her boyfriend. According to reports from Jamie herself, she had long struggled with depression and over time began using alcohol to cope. Drinking became a regular part of her life, and it wasn't exactly subtle. Her social media was filled with photos and posts about parties and alcohol. She even made a Halloween post where she was dressed as Buzz Lightyear from the film Toy Story. With a twist, the costume was themed entirely around drinking. Please note, at the time, she was a minor. In 2017, Jamie found herself in a strange confrontation in a parking area. She had argued with another driver over a spot and won the argument. However, upon returning to the car, she found a note left by the other driver that read, "I'm sorry your mother didn't raise you to be a considerate person. Hope you made it to whatever was so important to cause you to be that rude. Hopefully you're not always like that. Have a wonderful day, you entitled bitch." Today we know this fact because she herself posted the story and note on one of her social networks. Investigators later discovered that Jamie already had a prior record for driving under the influence. And on the night of Samantha's death, she had reportedly been to at least 4 different bars, consuming nothing but alcohol. During her first 3 weeks in jail, she made a total of 271 phone calls, of which only 128 actually connected. She spoke several times with her family, friends, boyfriend and lawyers, claiming she didn't believe it was happening, that it was an accident, that she was a good person. She often downplayed the crime, as if what happened was something banal, that people were exaggerating the situation and that this would ruin her life. At one point, she even complained about the prison food, saying she didn't like eating cold meatballs and hot dogs. She was also frustrated that she didn't have access to the TV remote. Her father tried to warn her about what she said during the calls, as they were all recorded and the media was covering the case fervently. But her father's advice was of no use. She was far more concerned about how people would see her, as she did not want to be seen as a bad person, than the fact that she had killed 1 person and seriously injured 2 others. She showed no sense of guilt, remorse, nor acknowledgement of the lives she forever changed. Jamie was officially charged of a crime known by the acronym DUI, or driving under the influence. This influence can be illicit drugs or legal drugs such as alcohol, for example, and even prescription medications. And because she injured 3 people, she would also face 2 charges of serious bodily injury and 1 of reckless homicide. The Komorowski family hired two well-known defense attorneys to represent Jamie at her first court appearance, which took place nearly 2 months later, in June 2023. At that hearing, a request for bail was made to await trial in freedom, but she did not appear in person. The defense claimed that she suffered from psychological disorders caused by severe depression. It was also said that day that she admitted to having problems with alcohol and had undergone psychological treatment for a while, but had abandoned therapy. The hearing was extended. In August, she appeared online with visible tears. Her legal team made a new proposal. If she was granted bail, she would stay under her family's supervision, resume mental health treatment, and avoid any alcohol consumption entirely. But the court rejected the deal. Jamie remained behind bars. However, the lawyers asked the court to at least block media access to court process data and phone call recordings, and this request was granted. From that point on, the press could still report on the case, but not publish the details of her private conversations. Ultimately, Jamie pleaded guilty to the DUI charge, and on December 2nd, 2024, Judge Deidre Jefferson sentenced her to 15 years for the 2 counts of DUI involving great bodily injury and 10 years for the reckless homicide. The sentences are concurrent, meaning she will spend 25 years in prison.
This tragedy. We're going to take a moment of silence for Sam. A moment of silence for Sam.
Aric filed a lawsuit, not only against Jamie but also against all the bars she went to that night, as she was very drunk. And according to American law, the establishment that sells alcoholic beverages is also responsible for the safety of its patrons, and seeing that a person is visibly intoxicated, the employees cannot continue serving drinks, as this could cause problems, not only for the person who is already intoxicated, but also for third parties, as was what happened. These lawsuits are still ongoing. Here's an eerie detail that has no direct connection with the case, but it's interesting to mention that Jamie's mother, Tracy Komorowski, also caused an accident that resulted in a fatal victim. But unlike her daughter, she was not to blame for what happened. In 2013, Tracy was driving close to an active fire scene when dense smoke overtook the road and she completely lost visibility. As a result, she accidentally ran over a firefighter named Jeff Scheurer, who died. But as it was proven accidental, she was not responsible for any crime. In the wake of Samantha's death, Aric's mother, Annette Hutchinson, launched a GoFundMe campaign to help cover the overwhelming expenses from funeral costs to medical treatments for the survivors. The fundraiser brought in over $360,000, which also helped the family host a beautiful ceremony for Samantha. It was held on the very same beach where she and Aric had said, "I do." Even though he was very weak, recently released from the hospital and using a wheelchair, he attended the tribute site that took place on May 13th, 2023. White and red flowers were distributed. They sang and celebrated the happy life that Samantha had. Surfers from across the region, many of whom didn't even know Samantha personally, came to show their support and helped make the tribute a powerful and unforgettable moment. As a lasting tribute, a wall near the crash site was painted with a mural showing the beach view from their wedding day. Written in bold, loving letters were the words, "Sam plus Aric forever." As if the pain of losing a wife wasn't enough for Aric, and the pain of losing a daughter for Lisa Miller, the son-in-law and mother-in-law, are simultaneously facing another serious legal process. Where should Samantha's assets be sent? According to South Carolina law, when someone dies without leaving a will, the beneficiaries follow a line by degree of family kinship. The first direct beneficiary is the spouse. Without a spouse, the next direct beneficiary becomes the line of descendants, children, grandchildren, etc. Without descendants, it passes up to ancestry, then it passes to the parents, then siblings, grandparents, uncles, etc. Everything follows an order considered by the courts as relevant degrees of kinship. However, Lisa is challenging this order. She does not agree that her daughter's assets and savings, in addition to future compensation, as people and companies are being sued for indirectly contributing to the accident, be handed over to her son-in-law. And for this, she puts some arguments into consideration. For her, the marriage was not fully consummated, as there was no wedding night. Furthermore, she discovered that the union documents were only registered just 3 days after the wedding by Aric's uncle. It is worth mentioning that on that day he was still admitted to the hospital without even knowing about his wife's death. Aric, who was previously treated by his mother-in-law like a son, is now identified by her as a traitor and scammer. He, on the other hand, believes that he has the right to be the direct beneficiary since their relationship wasn't ended by choice, but by a tragedy caused by a third party. In an attempt to avoid further emotional stress, and out of what he described as a desire to honour Samantha's memory, he offered to share 50% of any compensation he receives with Lisa and her family, but his mother-in-law rejected the offer. She continues to dispute the validity of the marriage in court, claiming it should be declared invalid, and insists that her daughter would have wanted her biological family, not her new husband's, to inherit everything. It's now up to the court to decide. And you guys, what do you think of this whole case? Do you agree with the sentence imposed on Jamie after driving drunk and causing this terrible accident? What about the battle over Samantha's estate? Is Lisa right to fight for her daughter's assets? Or does Aric have a rightful claim as her husband? Leave your opinion in the comments, and we'll see you in the next case.